Imagine discovering that the person you've been disrespecting for years actually has the power to destroy your entire life with a single phone call. That's what happened to my daughter Amelia when she introduced me as her gardener to impress her colleagues. I'm Theodore, and this is the story of how one moment of family betrayal became the most expensive mistake my daughter ever made. At the Atrium, the most exclusive venue in the city, my daughter was networking with her real estate firm when she gestured toward me dismissively. "Oh, that's just my gardener," she said with a laugh, like I was some hired help she'd brought along. But here's what Amelia didn't know about her gardener father. I pulled out my phone, called my private banker, and said 5 words that changed everything. "I want to buy this place." You're watching Betrayal HQ, where family disrespect meets ultimate justice. If you're new here, we share the real stories of family humiliation and the perfect revenge that follows, straight from the people who lived it. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because what Theodore did next will leave your jaw on the floor. Because the man she called her gardener, I didn't just have money, I had something much more dangerous: the patience and intelligence to use it perfectly. Within minutes, I owned the Atrium completely. Then I walked over to her fiancé and said, "I'm afraid I need everyone to leave. I just bought this place, and I'm closing it for renovations." The silence was deafening, but that was just the beginning. My daughter thought she was embarrassing some simple old man who tended gardens. She had no idea she'd just humiliated a billionaire who controlled a $40 billion empire. What happened next will restore your faith that disrespect always gets the payback it deserves. This wasn't just revenge. It was a masterclass in strategic destruction. This is my story. The moment my daughter introduced me as just my gardener to her colleagues at the Atrium gala, something cold settled in my chest. I watched Amelia smile at Marcus, her fiancé, as if she'd made a clever joke. The room was full of Vanguard Properties executives, all dressed in expensive suits, all looking at me like I was invisible. I pulled out my phone and dialed my private banker. "Theodore Vance here. I need to make an immediate purchase." Amelia was still talking, describing how I helped with her little garden project at home. Marcus laughed, the sound grating against my ears. "Yes, the Atrium venue, the entire property. Price is no object." I ended the call and slipped my seldom-used gold card back into my wallet. Within minutes, my banker called back. "Mr. Vance, the property is yours. Transfer complete." I walked over to Marcus, who was now discussing Vanguard's latest development project. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I'm afraid I need to ask everyone to leave. I just bought this place, and I'm closing it for renovations." The silence that followed was deafening. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Amelia had called 17 times. I let each call go to voicemail, listening to her messages grow increasingly frantic. "Dad, what were you thinking? You embarrassed me in front of my entire firm." Not once did she apologize for calling me her gardener. I called Miss Wu from Artemis Group, a financial investigation firm I'd used before. "I need a complete audit of Vanguard Properties," I told her. "Focus on their development projects and any personal guarantees made by staff members." "Any particular reason, Mr. Vance?" "Let's call it due diligence." That afternoon, Marcus arrived at my house uninvited. He looked nervous, constantly checking his phone. "Theodore, Amelia is really upset. Maybe we could work something out with the Atrium? I know some investors who might be interested in buying it from you." I poured him coffee and watched him fidget. His eagerness to get the property back told me everything I needed to know. "I'm not ready to sell yet, Marcus. I'm still deciding what to do with it." The ghost of my past came back to haunt Vanguard Properties 3 days later. While reviewing the deed to the Atrium, I discovered something I'd forgotten about: a commercial lease detail I'd written into the property 30 years ago. Back then, I'd owned a small development company. We'd been involved in structuring the original commercial agreements for the downtown block. I'd included a clause that gave the Atrium's owner veto power over specific development contracts in the adjacent area, the very area where Vanguard had their flagship project planned. I called my lawyer and had him draft a formal notice exercising my veto rights on Vanguard's preliminary land use agreement. It seemed like a small thing, but I knew it would create problems. Miss Wu called me that evening with interesting news. "Mr. Vance, that veto you filed? It triggers a penalty clause in an option to buy contract that Marcus personally guaranteed. He's liable for immediate payment of $2.3 million. I smiled. Marcus had signed his name to something he didn't fully understand. That was always dangerous in business. The unseen pressure was already building. I decided to take a casual walk downtown and stopped at the coffee shop where Amelia and Marcus often met clients. I ordered a simple black coffee and sat at a corner table with my newspaper. Within 20 minutes, Marcus rushed in, phone pressed to his ear. His conversation was desperate and hushed, but I caught enough to understand the situation. I need bridge financing immediately. The land deal is falling apart, and I'm personally exposed. Yes, I know Palace Capital is expensive, but I don't have other options right now. Palace Capital. I knew that name. They were predatory lenders who targeted desperate borrowers with impossible terms. Marcus was digging himself into a very deep hole. He ended his call and sat alone, head in his hands. I finished my coffee and left without him noticing me. That evening, I made a few phone calls to old contacts in the finance world. By morning, I'd have a complete picture of Palace Capital's operations, and I might just decide to become one of their investors. The coffee shop incident had given me valuable intelligence, but Amelia's next move surprised me. She called and asked to meet for lunch, suggesting I might enjoy having a project in retirement. "Dad, I've been thinking, maybe you'd like a consulting role at Vanguard? Something to keep you busy and involved." I stirred my soup slowly, letting her words hang in the air. "You think I need to feel important, Amelia?" "Well, I just thought. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in token positions." Her face flushed. She was realizing that buying the Atrium hadn't been an emotional outburst. It was the opening move in a much larger game. While we talked, I was already executing my next strategy. I'd instructed my investment team to quietly purchase commercial mortgage-backed securities tied to Vanguard's upcoming projects. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough to gain significant influence over their debt. "Dad, why are you doing this? What do you really want?" "I want respect, Amelia. Something I apparently won't get by tending gardens." The scrambled pieces of my plan were falling into place when an anonymous tip reached Vanguard's board. Miss Wu had sent a carefully crafted message to Mr. Sinclair, an independent board member known for his integrity. The message mentioned unauthorized personal guarantees compromising the Atrium development deal. Mr. Sinclair took the tip seriously. Within hours, he was asking Marcus uncomfortable questions about his signature on financial documents. I watched from across the street as Marcus left the Vanguard building looking shaken. His confident demeanor was cracking under pressure. That evening, Amelia called again. "Dad, did you send that message to the board?" "What message?" "Someone told Mr. Sinclair about Marcus's guarantee. The language they used, it sounds like something you'd say." I didn't confirm or deny her suspicion, but I could hear the wheels turning in her head. She was starting to understand that this wasn't random bad luck. "Amelia, in business, information has a way of finding the right people. This isn't business, Dad. This is family. You made it business when you introduced me as hired help." The price Marcus was willing to pay became clear when he requested another meeting. This time, he came with an offer that surprised even me. "Theodore, I'll buy the Atrium for $4 million. That's significantly above market value." I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. The desperation was obvious now. "That's very generous, Marcus. But I'm curious about something. Can you tell me about Vanguard's quarterly projections for the Northern District development?" He stammered, clearly unprepared for technical questions. That's not really my department's focus area." "Interesting. You're willing to spend $4 million on a property, but you can't discuss the market fundamentals of your own company's biggest project?" I stood up and walked to the window. "I'm not selling the property, Marcus, but I am buying something else." "What's that?" "Your time. Every day you spend trying to fix this mess is another day Vanguard falls further behind schedule. His face went pale. He was beginning to understand the scope of what he was facing. The logistics company I bought next seemed completely unrelated to real estate. Quick Haul was a small, specialized firm that handled construction material transportation. What Marcus didn't know was that Quick Haul held the exclusive contract for moving heavy materials through the city's northern transportation corridor. The same corridor Vanguard's project absolutely required. I called the Quick Haul CEO, an old colleague named Patrick, who'd been looking to retire. Patrick, I'm interested in buying your company. Full asking price, immediate closing. Theodore, this is unexpected. Can I ask why? Let's call it vertical integration. Within a week, I owned Quick Haul completely. Marcus would soon discover that every concrete truck, every steel beam, every piece of construction equipment he needed had to go through a company I now controlled. I didn't plan to stop their shipments entirely. That would be too obvious. Instead, I would introduce delays, paperwork requirements, and schedule conflicts that would slowly strangle their timeline. Amelia called that night, her voice tight with stress. Dad, what are you trying to accomplish here? I'm running businesses, Amelia, just like you taught me I should. The inconsequential alley behind the Atrium became Marcus's next headache. When Quick Haul started experiencing scheduling difficulties, he tried to route construction traffic through alternative paths. The only viable alternative was a narrow service alley that legally belonged to the Atrium property, my property now. I had my facilities team install a beautiful vintage fountain right in the center of the alley. It was decorative, historically appropriate, and completely immovable without extensive permitting. Marcus arrived at my house that evening, no longer pretending to be polite. Theodore, this has gone far enough. You're deliberately sabotaging our project. I'm beautifying my property, Marcus. The fountain is quite lovely, don't you think? You know exactly what you're doing. Yes, I do. I'm exercising my property rights as a responsible owner. He left angry and defeated. I watched him drive away, knowing that Vanguard's construction site was now completely inaccessible to heavy machinery. The next phase of my plan was about to begin. The emergency board meeting at Vanguard Properties was exactly what I'd been expecting. Miss Wu's contacts inside the company kept me informed of everything discussed. Marcus tried to frame the situation as an external attack by vulture capital, but Mr. Sinclair wasn't buying it. These aren't random market forces, Sinclair said. Someone is specifically targeting our northern project. And given the anonymous tip about personal guarantees, I think we need to examine Marcus's decision-making more closely. During the meeting, Sinclair received another envelope. This one contained detailed documentation of Marcus's personal liability from the land use veto, complete with bank records showing his exposure to the penalty clause. The board's mood shifted immediately. What had seemed like bad luck now looked like gross negligence. Marcus tried to defend himself, but the numbers were damning. He'd committed the company to a project with hidden liabilities he'd never disclosed. By the end of the meeting, a forensic accountant had been hired to review Marcus's entire department. I allowed myself a small smile. The investigation would uncover much more than they expected. The forensic accountant was thorough, professional, and completely unaware that she was reporting her findings to me through a complex chain of intermediaries. What she found in Marcus's expense reports was fascinating. He'd been disguising loan payments as infrastructure upgrades for months. The payments all went to Palace Capital, that predatory lender I'd heard him mention at the coffee shop. Mr. Vance, Miss Wu reported, Marcus has been using company funds to service personal debt. We're talking about clear embezzlement here. How much? Nearly $400,000 over 6 months. This was better than I'd hoped. Marcus hadn't just made bad business decisions. He'd crossed the line into criminal fraud. I instructed the accountant to prepare a comprehensive report for the board. Marcus's career at Vanguard was about to end, but I wasn't finished with him yet. Miss Wu, I want you to investigate Palace Capital more deeply. I'm considering an investment. She was quiet for a moment. You're going to buy the company that holds his debt? I'm going to buy the company that owns his future. The broken engagement happened exactly as I'd predicted. Amelia and Marcus had a massive fight about the mounting pressure at Vanguard. In her anger, she revealed something Marcus had never known: the true scope of my wealth. You have no idea who my father really is, she screamed. He could buy your entire company without blinking. Marcus went silent. He'd assumed I was just a comfortable retiree with some savings. Learning that I commanded serious financial power changed everything for him. That night, he made a decision that confirmed every suspicion I'd had about his character. My security cameras at the Atrium caught him meeting with someone in the alley, someone carrying file boxes, and a laptop. Marcus was stealing intellectual property from Vanguard, planning to disappear before the forensic audit destroyed him completely. I called Amelia immediately. Your ex-fiancé is a thief, Amelia. I have video evidence. What are you talking about? Meet me at the Atrium tomorrow morning. Bring coffee. You're going to want to sit down for this conversation. The hidden camera footage was clear and damning. Marcus taking files, copying hard drives, meeting with unknown contacts in the middle of the night. Amelia watched the video with growing horror. Dad, how long have you been recording this? Since the day I bought the property. It's my legal right to monitor my own premises. But the most devastating part of the footage wasn't the theft. It was Marcus embracing another woman, someone who was clearly more than a business associate. Amelia sat in stunned silence as the implications sank. He's been planning this for weeks, she whispered. Yes. The moment he realized Vanguard was in trouble, he started planning his exit strategy. He was never going to stay and fix things, Amelia. He was always going to run. I paused the video on a frame showing Marcus's face clearly. This is who you were going to marry. This is the man you thought deserved your respect more than your father did. She started crying, but I felt no satisfaction in her tears. The unscheduled audit I triggered came from an unexpected direction. Using my position as a major holder of Vanguard's commercial mortgage-backed securities, I forced a technical default on one of their secondary loans. This triggered an automatic regulatory review of the entire company. Not an internal audit controlled by the board, but a comprehensive investigation by federal agencies. The timing was perfect. Marcus's theft would be discovered by federal investigators, not company security. His problems were about to become criminal, not just professional. Amelia called me, panicked. Dad, federal agents just arrived at Vanguard. They're freezing all the accounts, seizing computers. What did you do? I exercised my rights as a creditor, Amelia. When companies default on their obligations, regulators get involved. But Marcus made his choices. Actions have consequences. The federal audit would prevent Marcus from completing his theft and fleeing the country. He was trapped now, with nowhere to run and mounting evidence of his crimes. The familiar faces at Quick Hall should have warned Amelia sooner. When she finally met with Patrick, the CEO, trying to negotiate some relief from the logistics problems, his greeting shocked her. Amelia, you look just like your father. Theodore and I go way back. He built the distribution network I've been using for 20 years. Her face went white as understanding dawned. You? You work for my father? Well, he owns the company now, but we've been partners for decades. Quick Hall was part of his original empire, back before he moved into the really big money. Amelia left the meeting in a daze. She'd always dismissed my early business ventures as small-time operations. She never realized those small companies had grown into the infrastructure that powered half the city's commercial development. That evening, she confronted me directly. How much of this city do you actually control, Dad? I smiled. More than you ever bothered to learn about. The original code was the key to everything. I arranged to meet Amelia one final time at the Atrium, now empty and quiet. Amelia, I want to tell you a story about how I started my career. She sat across from me, exhausted and defeated. 30 years ago, I developed a proprietary financial modeling system. It was revolutionary. It could predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy. Dad, what does this have to do with the algorithm that drives Vanguard Properties' entire valuation system? The one that made them the most successful development firm in the state? It's my code, Amelia. Stolen and slightly modified, but fundamentally mine. Her mouth fell open. Vanguard's founder took my work, dismissed me as a low-class technician, and built his empire on my innovation. Sound familiar? I'm saying your Gardner comment wasn't the first time someone in that company treated me like hired help. The difference is, this time I had the power to do something about it. The true ownership of Palace Capital was my final card. I'd been buying shares through shell companies for months, waiting for the right moment to reveal my position. Amelia, I need to tell you something else. Marcus borrowed money from Palace Capital to cover his Vanguard losses. I know. He told me about the loan. What he didn't tell you is that I'm the majority shareholder of Palace Capital. The color drained from her face. That means I own Marcus's debt. Every penny he borrowed, every payment he's missed, every penalty he's accumulated, it all comes to me. She stared at me in disbelief. You set this up? All of it. I set up a trap for anyone who would underestimate me or steal from me. Marcus walked into it willingly. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. I wasn't attacking Vanguard Properties, Amelia. I was reclaiming what was already mine. Marcus's final desperate move came exactly as I'd predicted. Facing criminal charges and financial ruin, he tried to throw Amelia under the bus. He sent the Vanguard board forged emails, suggesting she had encouraged his risky borrowing from Palace Capital. He painted her as the architect of the company's problems, claiming he'd only taken the loans at her insistence. It was a pathetic last attempt to save himself, but it backfired spectacularly. I provided the board with actual bank records, recorded phone calls, and documented evidence that cleared Amelia completely while proving Marcus's attempted fraud. The board was horrified. Not only had Marcus embezzled funds and stolen intellectual property, he'd also tried to frame his fiancée when caught. Mr. Sinclair called an emergency meeting. By unanimous vote, the board decided to dissolve Vanguard Properties entirely and sell all assets to avoid further scandal. I made sure my holding company submitted the winning bid. The silent ejection of Marcus from Vanguard headquarters was witnessed by Amelia and me from across the street. Federal agents escorted him out in handcuffs, not for my financial trap, but for the embezzlement the forensic accountant had discovered. Dad, is this what you wanted? To see him arrested? I wanted justice, Amelia. For 30 years, I watched inferior people succeed using my stolen work. Marcus was just the latest example. As the police car drove away, I felt a strange emptiness. The victory was complete, but it had cost me my relationship with my daughter. The real tragedy, I told her, is that you chose to respect him more than me. You valued his status over my substance. She was crying openly now. I never knew, Dad. I never understood what you'd accomplished. You never bothered to ask. The humiliation was complete when Vanguard's assets were sold to my holding company for a fraction of their original value. The board was desperate to distance themselves from the scandal, but the final twist came from an unexpected source, the mysterious woman Marcus had been meeting with in the alley. She turned out to be his secret business partner, someone he'd promised a share of the stolen intellectual property. When his arrest made the news, she immediately filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against him for breach of contract. Marcus would face criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and financial ruin. He'd lost everything, including Amelia. Standing on the Vanguard building's roof deck, Amelia finally apologized. Dad, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I know you were. Can we fix this? I looked out over the city where I'd built my empire in silence and shadows. That depends. Are you ready to learn who your father really is? The true headquarters of my business empire occupied an entire downtown building that Amelia had never seen. When I brought her there for the first time, her eyes widened in amazement. State-of-the-art trading floors, quantum computing systems, and offices filled with some of the brightest financial minds in the world. Dad, what is this place? This is Vance Quantitative Holdings. We manage investment portfolios worth approximately $40 billion. She walked through the offices in stunned silence, watching my teams analyze global markets in real time. The gold card you saw me use at the Atrium? It's not connected to a bank account, Amelia. It's the access key to my private banking network. I led her to my personal office, where wall-mounted screens showed real-time positions in companies worldwide. I don't just have money, Amelia. I have influence. I have power. And I've had it for decades, while you thought I was just tending gardens. The succession offer I made surprised even me. Instead of punishment, I offered Amelia redemption. I'm giving you the CEO position at the new Vance Group, the company built from Vanguard's assets. Dad, I don't deserve? No, you don't. But you're going to earn it. I outlined the terms. She would rebuild the company from scratch, using only a small hand-picked team and no financial support from me for 3 years. Your first task is integrating my original algorithms back into the system legally. You'll restore the integrity that was stolen 30 years ago. She accepted the challenge, understanding that this was her chance to prove herself worthy of the family name. One more thing, Amelia. The company, culture you build will determine whether my empire continues or dies with me. The reintroduction happened 3 years later at another high-profile industry event, but this time, Amelia was the guest of honor, celebrating the Vance Group's remarkable success. I stood quietly to the side, watching her command respect from the most powerful people in the room. She'd earned every bit of it through intelligence, hard work, and integrity. When she spotted me, she walked over with confidence I'd never seen before. Mr. Harrison, she said to a leading financier, I'd like you to meet someone very important. She put her hand on my arm with genuine warmth. This is Theodore Vance, the architect of my entire career. He taught me the difference between having wealth and having power. The financier shook my hand with obvious respect. Mr. Vance, your daughter speaks of you often. She credits you with everything she's accomplished. The conversation continued for several minutes, with other industry leaders joining our circle. I watched Amelia navigate these relationships with skill and authenticity. This wasn't the status-obsessed woman who had once been embarrassed by her father. This was someone who had learned to value substance over appearances. As we talked with the other executives, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 years of watching Amelia rebuild herself and her company from the ground up. She hadn't just proven herself capable of running the Vance Group. She'd transformed it into something better than Vanguard had ever been. The culture she'd created emphasized integrity over profit, substance over style. Her employees respected her because she'd earned their respect, not demanded it. Dad, she said quietly during a lull in the conversation, I need to tell you something. What's that? I understand now what you were really teaching me. It wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about learning to value the right things. I nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with business success. And what do you value now, Amelia? Character, integrity, the kind of power that comes from being worthy of respect, not just demanding it. She paused, looking around the room at the networking executives. I used to think success meant impressing people like this. Now I know it means becoming someone worth being impressed by. The evening wound down with Amelia receiving a standing ovation for her keynote speech about ethical leadership in business. As the applause faded, she found me again. Dad, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For teaching me that having wealth means nothing if you don't have character to go with it. We walked out of the venue together, father and daughter united in understanding for the first time in years. You know, she said as we reached the street, I never did ask you what happened to that fountain you put in the atrium's alley. I smiled. I had it moved to the courtyard of Vance Quantitative Holdings. It's quite beautiful there. And symbolic? Sometimes, the obstacles we create for others become monuments to our own growth. As we said goodnight, I felt something I hadn't experienced since her mother died. complete peace with my family legacy. Amelia had learned the lesson I'd spent my entire life mastering. Power without character is meaningless. Wealth without wisdom is empty. And respect without substance is just an illusion. She was no longer my gardener's daughter. She was my heir, in every sense that mattered. The next generation of the Vance legacy was in capable hands. If Theodore's billion-dollar revenge satisfied you, tomorrow's story will shock you even more. Meet the elderly man whose nurse kept stealing his medication. So he gave her power of attorney over the entire nursing home's debt. Tomorrow's story. My nurse kept stealing my medication, so I gave her power of attorney over the entire nursing home debt. What happened next proves that sometimes the best revenge is giving people exactly what they think they want. Subscribe and hit that bell, because tomorrow's story will leave you speechless. See you at Betrayal HQ.